What up, y'all, and welcome back to another Pokemon Pocket video. It's your boy Ben here, and for today we're going through the Meta Weekly Report. I'm excited to dive into the top 10 decks. That's right, there's 10 of them for you today that are performing at such a high rate in these tournaments. Prepare yourself for the meta to come, for what you might see in the emblem event, and what you might take away so that you can build on your decks as you follow this video. And before we go ahead and get started, only about 13% of you who are watching are subscribed, so we have a goal to hit 10,000 subscribers. So if you haven't already, go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell button, especially if you appreciate daily uploads to the channel. All right, y'all, with that out of the way, let's get into it. So big tournaments just finished up here. We had the Earthsea Day tournament with almost 1,900 players. There's another tournament with about 700 players, and one more, I believe, that was like around the 300. So just kind of like looking across the boards and seeing everything else like that. And guess who it is? It's Charizard and Moltres back to its roots, where it's just the two of these. And quite frankly, being able to just have 4 basics seems kind of scary, but Charizard EX is making it work with the likes of Giant Cape to keep your Moltres alive longer, so that way you don't have to worry about like the attacks that it's doing. You have Pokemon communication to be able to find your pieces faster, so you're not really worrying about Moltres is losing out unless the opponent has a Cyrus and is like ready to go for it. But at that point, your Charizard EX is fully ready to go. You also have Leaf here to kind of just like keep and conserve the energy on Moltres if you so choose. The interesting thing that this deck is not running, is what I've seen a lot of Charizard decks do, is that they include 1 copy of Dawn here, and primarily that is to sneak an energy onto the Moltres so that way you can attack for 70 by like as early as turn 2, because you do turn 1 Inferno Dance, Dawn is 2, and then you have your 3rd energy as you turn and you attack for 70. So if you like that option, by all means, I think that's really fun to play in here. There's 2 potions in here, so maybe you give up one of those to add the Dawn in. But other than that, this deck is still consistent, and for the fact that it's now come back around, especially after it was like fighting for its life in Mythical Island, it's good to see that. Up next, we have the Executor Celebi deck, which I love saying Executor first because this deck is really featuring this guy with Celebi and Mew here as support. You are running 2 Executes, 2 Executors. You're getting your energy up there, and then you're attacking. Being able to sustain through Erica, through Giant Cape, through Potion is a lot to deal with. And what's very interesting here, what you really want to do and like kind of like have a great start, is that you want an Execute and you kind of want like a Celebi or like a Pokeball. So like these Pokeball draws, these Celebis and Mew EXs, you actually don't play out right away, because Pokemon communication here is used to find your Executor EX. You want to evolve your Execute as long as you can, and then you can start powering up one of these ones on the backswing. The power in this is that your opponent has to go through 2 EX mons in order to get the win, which is really strong because of their attacks. I mean, Celebi, we know, can deal really high, and Mew EX can just dish it right back. So all in all, this has been a great package, and we're again seeing why Executor EX is probably the premier grass type EX right now. And I like, if you think I'm wrong, let me know in the comments, but like this is really inching to be the #1 EX grass type right now. Next up is this Magnezone Fighting Box deck. I think we saw through Mythical Island that this like fighting core here between like Hitmonlee, Marshadow, oftentimes you're running what should I face it? The Duck, Farfetch, but in this option here, you're running Hitmonchan, and you have just fighting energy for this. And now with the Magnezone, with the Magneton engine, these 6 cards here can be run in virtually any deck that you're really trying to use here, because of itself energy producing through Magneton. This is really cool because like once you start to build these up, the really fun part about that, especially with the combination of X speed here, is that all of these have just one retreat cost. So you're really dancing around the opponent here. If you, what's really fun as well is that like if you go first, folks who see fighting energy automatically think Hitmonlee. You throw your Hitmonlee out, they confirm it, and then they avoid their bench. So now you get to power up your Marshadow, your Hitmonchan, and not really worry about your Hitmonlee yet because it doesn't really need to be out there. Then you can start peeling away with your Hitmonchan and just kind of dance around your opponent, which is really a good time doing that. And then you have your Magnezone, which is really great for this deck as like its top end finisher, dealing 110. But the key points here is that you have your Hitmonlee and your Hitmonchan softening up the board so that way Magnezone can take it out in one shot. Up next is one who has really kind of cemented itself since its premiere in Mythical Island as the Gyarados EX deck. You're running your 2 Judgedons, your 2 Gyaradoses, your 2 Greninja lines, and then you're just adding a Cyrus because Greninja and Cyrus is ideal. Honestly, anything that your opponent's trying to build up to really go against your Gyarados EX, you can soften up with the Greninja and get them ready for Cyrus. This combination is deadly, and I love the fact that this can be a thing. Obviously, there's a drawback, so you really need to find your Greninja line, but if you are having your Dragon up and your draws are there, this deck is consistently performing well, and it's a tough one to beat, but there are ways around that. You make sure that you attack their Magikarp, you make sure that you have things that can attack their backline so that they can't set up, but this is still a power horse to be reckoned with. So up next we have the Dark Zone, the Magnezone Darkrai deck, which is really interesting to see that like we talked about it later in the video. Because as it stands right now in like the biggest tournament, it is not like, you know, in the top 4. However, in another tournament, it did win. So like it, you know, has its good days, it has its off days, but even its off days is still in like the top 8, right? Like, so this deck is still very strong as we talk about it. You have your Judgedon that's set up here. Your Darkrai is poking at it because you're attaching your energy. You have your Magnezone that's powering up through the Volt Charge. The more turns that your opponent gives you, the more electric charge that you're building up with this Magneton. So you really only want to play Magnezone when you are bringing up your Magneton up, so that way you can consistently get like 3 or 4 of these things on there, and then you provide the dark energy that next following turn, so that way you don't have to worry about that. So that's really cool with this deck, is that you just slowly just whittle down your opponent, and they have to get through really like these Judgedons, these Magnezones before they get to your Darkrai, and then you just kind of like make people give up. In that sense, this has been a really hardcore to deal with, but then again, with the introduction of Cyrus and having mons that can attack the back line, nobody's safe anymore, so really making sure that we're getting that 1-2 combo in. Another variation of this Darkrai deck, which is like really just, this is like a chip away deck, right? You have the Judgedon that deals -20 to them if they attack you. You have Greninja that deals -20 through their Water Shuriken, and you have Darkrai that deals 20 through the energy. So this is just a constant wave of attack that is happening if your opponents do that. And then with Kangaskhan here, which is also serves as a tank for just 1 energy, can deal up to 60. So you have a lot of instances here where you can attack. Cyrus being lethal here through these two, bringing things up to finish them off with your Darkrai once they are ready for that. Up next, we have a look at a new variation of the 18 trainer deck. We've seen it just run with Articuno. There's been kind of like these pieces of the Pachirisu coming about as well, but this here has been doing really well. This deck managed to go 8-0 and tie 2 games, which is really interesting to think about when we haven't seen something like this before. So we have 1 Articuno EX, 1 Palkia EX, obviously your 2 Misties for your water Pokemon you're running, and then they're running a whole bunch of cards here, right? We have 2 Sabrinas, we have a Leaf, we have a Cyrus, we have a Mars, we have a Giovanni, we have a Pokeball, we have a Potion, we have a Pokédex, we have a Hand Scope, we have a Rocky Helmet, we have a Giant Cape. So I'm like trying to figure out like how this all gets put together, but like I think a lot of these things make sense in a way. So like Mars is just kind of like this like trainer red card kind of situation. However, if you play Mars after they knock out, let's say, the Articuno or they knock out the Pocket EX, they're automatically getting down to just one card. So I think that's kind of interesting here. Pokédex allows you to see what these top 3 cards are. So Pokeball helps you shuffle it around so that way you can target some of these whenever you get the chance to. Cyrus here is actually really good with Blizzard, since Blizzard attacks the bench. Same thing with Dimensional Storm, since Dimensional Storm attacks the bench as well. So this is very interesting. Obviously you have your Rocky Helmet and your Giant Cape here for sustainability on both of these mons. So I'm really curious as to like the types of things that we can do with this kind of deck. And just to like talk through this, just because this is still a very new deck, it did go against Executor EX, Magnezone Hitmonlee, Greninja, 2 Darkrai Magnezones, the Charizard Moltres CX deck, Weavile Darkrai, right? Like it's going against these like hard-hitting, meta-hitting decks, and like standing on its own is doing well. So I'm like very excited to see how this could potentially shake up the meta. Up next, we have the king of grass type EXs again with Executor EX with Yanmega as one of its finishers. This breakpoint here for 3 energy is 120, and what's interesting is that where you have like Celebi, you have to constantly put energy up there to be able to get to this point. With Yanmega EX, 120 one-shots a lot of Pokemon, especially after they're getting weakened down by this Executor EX. If you put this Rocky Helmet on this, that's 40 or up to 100 damage per turn. But then what's really nice about this breakpoint is that, as we've seen with all of the dark Pokemon, aka Darkrai, versions and styles of decks running around, Yanmega clears that. This 120 goes to 140. It breaks down Darkrai, breaks down Weavile, so unless they're wearing a giant cape. So this is really cool. I like this. And what's really nice about Yanmega with the Executor is that you have 2 targets for your Erica here, which gives you a lot of sustainability that way. Up next, we have a fighting deck, and this couldn't be a meta report if we didn't have one. And this is like shaping out to be one of probably the best ways to play Lucario. Lucario allows all of your fighting type Pokemon to get plus 20 once this is going. So this Hitmonchan turns to 50 damage, this Rampardos turns to 150 damage, and this Marshadow, oftentimes than not, turns into 120 damage. So with this Cyrus being active between your Hitmonlees and your Hitmonchans and people trying to run away from you, you are really knocking out tons and tons of Pokemon. Rampardos is a stage 2 Pokemon. However, I do have to say 1 energy for 130 damage is insane. Regardless if it goes to 150, if you have the likes of like Charizard or like a Moltres or like a Darkrai, like the Pokemon that will like live this thing, then that means the drawback here where this loses 50 health goes away. So those Pokemon on that end still can't clear this thing because it still has 150 health. Like Rampardos is a very sneaky, powerful piece to be adding into these decks, and with the support of Lucario, it's great. And then the last deck that we're going to be talking about today is the Dialga, Yanmega, and Mew EX deck. Dialga here is ramping up your Yanmegas and your Mew EXs. One of the cool things about this deck is that this Metallic Turbo turns these on immediately, so you're really powering that up there. What you can also get your second one ready that's online. Something that I've seen in place of like one of these tools is a Dawn here as well, because you can Metallic Turbo, get 2 energy, and then Dawn, and then you have your 3rd energy and then your 4th energy from the energy zone, and now you're dealing 130 in 2 turns. The only tricky part about this deck is that you want energy advantage, right? Like you want to be able to put the first energy on here for your Dialga EX. That's the really only drawback, because when it goes first, it's really kind of hard to ramp up because this deck is relying on that Metallic Turbo to really power up those powerful attacks from either Yanmega or from your Mew EX to like be able to knock them back. So that is the meta report for this week. As always, I'm like always in shock and just like always excited about the competitive brews and the creativity behind them. We can see that like we thought that the Darkrai Magnezone deck was going to be it forever, and we're seeing innovations from old decks, we're seeing new decks come out, and even the Magnezone fighting decks are like just like in a piece of itself. So as always, we give things time, we give the meta time to shape out to what it's being. We're looking forward to what next week brings and continue to see the trends of whether these decks are here to stay or if they're ready to go. Until the next one, y'all, hit that like button, subscribe, click that notification bell button, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace!